The Abu Dhabi season finale turned into an almost perfect piece of drama. At the start, three title contenders were lined up next to each other. Verstappen on pole, Norris alongside him, and Piastri just behind. The math was simple. Lando only needed to finish on the podium to become champion, even if Max won. The Dutchman did exactly that. He won the race. Piastri finished second. Norris completed the podium and took the title by a mere 2 points. That raises the main question: why didn't Verstappen, who lost the championship by such a microscopic margin, try to act as aggressively and tactically as possible? Everyone remembered Abu Dhabi 2016, when Hamilton deliberately slowed the pack to expose Rosberg to attacks and attempt to wrest the title away. But the circumstances were completely different this time. Yas Marina today is faster and smoother with stronger DRS effects. It's much harder for the leader to deliberately slow down without handing over position. Max had one Red Bull up front facing two McLarens and not particularly quick Ferraris and Mercedes behind. McLaren had laid out their strategy very smartly even before the race. Norris started on medium tires, Piastri on hards. The team didn't want an intra-team fight. They wanted the title. Lando was told in advance, if Oscar is faster at the start, let him through. That's how it played out. Piastri moved up to second early. Lando kept P3, which points-wise was already ideal. One McLaren constantly pressured Verstappen on pace, while the other sat in the champion's position and could calmly react to rival strategies. In that situation, if Max had started to drastically slow the race pace, he would first have exposed himself to an attack from Piastri, who was on the more stable hard tires. Losing first position would have instantly reduced his title chances to 0. Oscar was still in the fight. Inside Red Bull, they discussed the idea of repeating Hamilton's train trick. But they rejected it the moment they assessed how risky it was to throw away a comfortable gap for a scenario involving too many variables. One pit stop miscalculation, a bit of traffic, one too sharp deceleration. And suddenly Max not only fails to win the title but also loses the race victory. With one Verstappen versus two McLarens, and with Ferraris and Mercedes not really on the pace, Red Bull lacked the instruments to attempt a maneuver that wouldn't invite an immediate counterstrike. That's not to say they didn't try to influence the outcome at all. They had another tool: Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda's very specific strategy was to start on the hard tire, run a long first stint, and aim to be ahead of a pit stop Norris, thereby holding him up. And that's what happened. Lando fought his way forward, spectacularly passing two rivals, only to get held up by Yuki, who was running highly up the order and defending aggressively. Then came the incident everyone dissected from every angle. Tsunoda repeatedly changed line while defending, which looked chaotic. When Norris went for the inside, Yuki lurched over again, and Lando, to avoid spearing into his wheel, ran wide off the track and completed the pass beyond the white line. The stewards opened investigations for both drivers. Tsunoda for multiple changes of direction, and Norris for an overtake that went off track and might have gained him an advantage. In the end, Tsunoda was handed a 5-second penalty. Norris was not penalized. The stewards judged he had taken evasive action to avoid a collision rather than seeking an easy way around. That decision contained the seed of what could have become an epic controversy. Had Norris been given the standard 10 seconds for an off-track overtake, third would have become fourth, and the title would have swung to Verstappen. That is why the Tsunoda moment was debated so fiercely by fans and media alike. Rules treat multiple changes of direction as a clear infringement. Punishing the driver who is forced off the track by such defensive moves is harder to justify under the letter of the rules. The episode quickly turned into a meme and an excuse to criticize Red Bull's defensive style rather than a fatal blow to the legitimacy of Norris's title. What matters to us is this: The tactic existed, but it was executed through Tsunoda. And Max himself ran as clean a race as possible. Another factor that could have affected the title was Charles Leclerc. How the Monegasque sprang into the title fight is worth a close look. Charles could hardly have dreamed that an SF car like the one Ferrari fielded late in the year would put him back in podium contention. The internet joked that the SF25 should be burned. Maybe that was the mood in Maranello. Before the race, many hoped George Russell might press into the fray, pushing Norris off the crucial third spot. How wrong that proved to be in qualifying. Russell ended up 5th behind Leclerc. It looked as if Ferrari would be absent again. Russell botched the start and surrendered places to Leclerc and Alonso. Alonso was then overtaken, but Russell could not match the pace up front. In the opening stint, Leclerc surprisingly kept up with the McLarens and sat on Norris's tail. Ferrari had DRS on the cars ahead, and it seemed Leclerc might pull off a sensational result. But the miracle didn't happen. Norris yielded to Piastri but refused to give way to Leclerc's. Hope among Ferrari fans grew because of the potential penalty for Norris over the Tsunoda overtake. Leclerc was keeping the gap under 5 seconds for a long time and, with a penalty to Norris, would have occupied the key P3. First, the stewards declined to penalize Norris, and then Leclerc slipped out of the 5-second window. Still, Charles had managed to touch the title fight, even if only indirectly. I hope next year he'll contest the championship not as a supporting actor, but as one of the genuine challengers. After the finale, an easy argument surfaced online. If not for Barcelona, Max would be champion. There, Verstappen received a 10-second penalty for contact with Russell when he should have given the place back. And in the end, he lost 9 points. Exactly the margin he lacked in Abu Dhabi. Formally, the arithmetic checks out, but Max rejects such simplifications outright. He said plainly that a championship is not decided by one race but by 24 events. Reducing everything to a single episode is wrong. Look at the season as a whole, and the picture shifts. There was the home round in Austria, where an early collision took Verstappen out on lap 1, 0 points where he at least expected a top 5. There were tricky events like the rainy Silverstone, where a restart error set him back and he had to fight back on a drying track. There was the painful Hungarian GP when Max himself said nothing was working. The car felt like a midfield machine, and he qualified down in P8. At that time, McLaren's pace there simply demolished Red Bull's. Meanwhile, Red Bull were managing heavy internal turmoil. Horner's resignation, restructuring at the top, and a scramble to find settings that would bring consistent pace. Against that backdrop, Norris wasn't perfect either. He suffered retirements, technical issues, and a disqualification in Las Vegas, as well as team strategic blunders. But the decisive difference over the year was that Lando rarely paid a hugely expensive price for his mistakes. That, in the end, is what produced the 2-point margin. So now it's clearer why Red Bull didn't create chaos in Abu Dhabi in search of the title. First, Yas Marina's layout and the balance of power made repeating Hamilton's train tactic unsafe. There was too much risk of losing even the race win. Second, Red Bull tried to influence things via Tsunoda. Third, Verstappen seemed to view the season as a marathon rather than a set of stunts in a single final. He won the most races, clawed back massive deficits, and lost the title because of the accumulation of dozens of small episodes. Not simply because he failed to brake a couple of times in Abu Dhabi. Norris became champion for the simplest reason. Across the year, he paid fewer times with huge points losses and held his nerve in the final stretch. Max delivered one of the most powerful seasons of his career, but fell victim to a car that could be unstable at times. The absence of outright foul play in the finale is only one brushstroke in this painting, not the single explanation for where the title was decided. This championship will go down in the history books. Follow us on our socials. Links are in the description. We discuss races there, break down the news, and share analysis. Help us reach an important goal: 5,000 subscribers before New Year's. Subscribe to this channel right now. Every like helps. This was Inside the Paddock. See you next time.